My name is John. I can show you guys if you want. I have 9 books out. I self-publish. I love to write books. For me, it's a fun, expressive, creative outlet. So I figured I'd do this Zoom workshop today in case there are other people that want to know what it's like to publish a book. We're going to be recording it so that the people who signed up but can't make it will be able to, access a link to it. So I did put that in the Eventbrite description that the audio and visual, just my visual, but the audio will be recorded so I can share it with the people who couldn't make it. But I figured I would just start with intros so that I can maybe help you guys, see where you're at. So I'll just put in some questions in the chat. And just feel free to share as much as you want or as little as you want. But I figured I'd try and make this useful to you guys so that if somebody has a manuscript already and they just need help, where to go for a traditional publisher, most of this will focus on self-publishing. But I just want to kind of see how I can help you guys and make this useful to you. So I guess I could start with myself. Question number 1, what city are you from? So my name is John. I'm from Albany, New York. The genre that I write would probably be kind of a mix of historical fiction. I write spy thrillers that have different aspects of kind of diplomacy, love, travel, and political drama. How far am I in the publishing journey? Well, I've already published. And yeah, so if you guys see in the chat the 4 questions, feel free to just let me know where you're at so that I can kind of make this useful to you.
How do you define from?
I get the sense that you travel just as much as I do. Wherever, if you live in New York City now, you can say New York City, whatever place you call home.
Do you have anybody? I'll start.
Thanks, Elise.
So for identification purposes, I am from New England. And the pieces I have completed so far range from fiction to nonfiction. I have completed the writing process for 3 works, one of which I have gone through extensive revisions and have gotten that unpublished work copywritten. Actually, all 3 are unpublished and they are copywritten, so that I can now start sharing them and working on what the heck I need to do with them. And does it make sense to try and publish or whatever?
And I'm sorry, you said you have published something before, or you have not yet?
I have not.
Okay.
Most of my time has been spent actually grinding out and mastering as best as I can the craft of actually writing.
Yeah.
And even still, I know that I still have a lot of work to do. That may not be giving myself enough credit, but I know that I am in this process, and it is not a quick one. So I've been doing it seriously since about 2016.
Yep.
And I am now at the point where I have a couple of finished works. I have protected them, and I'm ready to start the next phase. I just don't quite know how best to do that. And so to answer question number 4, that's what I'm here to learn.
That is beautiful. Oh my God. Okay, yeah. I mean, a lot of the time what people do is they will actually register the copyright on the date of publication rather than before it comes out. I mean, if you wanted to protect it, there's nothing that stops you from... So the way that copyright works, probably some of you guys know this, once it's in tangible form, for example, if I have a clipboard and a pen and I write I don't know, the green flag of of the new country flew on the island. So I just wrote a sentence. The green flag of the new country flew on the island. Technically, this is protected. This is copyrighted because it's tangible physical form. If you want to get legal about it, I could literally pay $65. I could go to the US Copyright Office and say, I just wrote the sentence, the green flag of the new country flew on the island. And that way, if somebody else starts making money off of the sentence, the green flag of the new country flew on the island, I could sue them because I had it first. And the US Copyright has a record that I wrote the green flag of the new country flew on the island because I wrote it first, because I registered it with the Copyright Office. I could sue them for making money off of my stuff because I wrote it first, I registered it first. So that's how copyright works, is that there's more legal rights for litigation if you register it, but because it's a physical form right here, it's already protected. I already own the copyright. If I just spoke to you and I said the green flag of the new country flew on the island, it's not protected because it's not a tangible form. It's not typed. It's not handwritten. But because this is handwritten, because in a tangible form, my rights are already protected. So that's why a lot of the time authors will not actually bother to pay the $65 and register with the US Copyright Office. Unless, for example, they might be concerned that if they submit it to a bunch of agents and a bunch of publishers, a lot of eyes will go on it. If it's really good, somebody could steal it.
Right.
Because there's no way to prove, right? Like when you wrote that.
Well, that's the thing.
Realized
Right.
I wrote that first. He stole it from me.
Right.
Exactly, especially with the increase in technology compromises
Yep.
that
Yeah.
one would experience today.
Yep.
So,
I mean,
that's important to me, at least.
yeah, it's
just having experienced
Yep, yeah.
the tech side of things.
right.
I'm a lot wiser now, so
I wouldn't.
I've learned a lot.
Right. That's not a bad idea. I should say also that a lot of publishers don't like to open attachments because they might get 10,000 emails of all these agents and individual authors who are querying them, and they're afraid of viruses. So a lot of the time they will actually, for traditional publishing, ask for a piece of paper because they don't want to open a million attachments with viruses. So if they have a physical piece of paper, as you can imagine, it's a tiny bit harder to copy paste. So I'm not saying, I mean, what you have is not a bad idea to copyright it before you send it out to a million people. But it's also, here's the reason why I don't do that. I'm just going to be very honest with you because this is what I've heard and this is how I've heard it. A publisher might get 10,000, manuscripts. And, as authors, we're very dedicated to our work. We're very proud of our work. We own our work. We never want someone else to steal it. And with all due respect, we are one of 10,000 submissions. Even if it's the most brilliant thing that we think we've ever written, we're only one of 10,000 pieces of paper that they got that year. And it's usually ethically, it's pretty unusual for a publisher to steal it or even for an agent to steal it. I mean, if you want to pay the $65, it definitely won't hurt. But usually what's recommended is so that you register the copyright the date that it comes out. So if it comes out on a specific date, that's when you would go to copyright.gov and pay the $65 and register it. But it really can't hurt. I mean, if you want to protect yourself, it will not hurt. My personal opinion is that it wouldn't do much to help. But it definitely can't hurt. Definitely can't hurt.
It helps you sleep at night, right?
Yeah.
I'm sleeping very well.
Yeah. No,
Is there any
yeah.
any like would any publisher, would they care one way or the other? Does it matter to them one way or the other?
Well, actually, that's a really good point you bring up. So, when you use a traditional publisher, like if you go to Penguin Random House or something like that, the way it works is they give you an advance, so it might be a couple $1,000s, and in exchange for that advance, they own the copyright, so they will henceforth going forward own your work. That's why I like to self-publish, honestly, because when the book comes out, your name is on the cover, but they have full control over editing it. They can cut things out, they can put things in there. Your name is still there, but they have full control over what's written. You can't even post it on your own website. If you have a personal website and you go through a traditional publisher route, technically the publisher owns your writing, not you. So you can't even like post what you've written like on your personal website, because technically the publisher wants to make money and have the publisher receive the payment for the books that are printed. So you can
purchase. Can
Yeah.
I purchase the copyright?
Yeah.
of the work?
You can transfer the copyright. So if you initially do the claim through the Copyright Office, you can show that you own the copyright. There's probably a way to transfer the rights to the publisher once you sell the rights. I'm sure you can do that. I don't think they would mind, but of course that's really a publisher's decision of whether or not they want to bother with transferring the rights versus just take something that's completely uncopyrighted and they have the original claim on it. The only thing I would caution against, I don't think it's a terrible sin to copyright something and then send it to a publisher, and then the publisher transferred the rights to the publisher. But what is a terrible sin is to self-publish something and then take it to a traditional publisher and have them republish it, because that is really hard to do. A traditional publisher like Penguin Random House, the big New York ones, they don't like to publish something that's already been out, that's already been published. So that's what I would caution against. Like you can copyright it now, but don't self-publish it. Don't publish it and then take it to someone else to publish, because you're probably going to be rejected because it's already out there.
Yeah.
And that's the novelty of having original work that's never been seen before, that's never been published before, is that they don't want it if it's already been out there. It's not new. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Have you done both routes? Like, have you published and self-published?
So I have only self-published, and that has worked really well for me. I mean, if you want to traditionally publish, some of the advantages of traditional publishing is obviously the advance. You might get a couple grand for signing off the rights, but then they kind of own your baby and they can, control it however they want. Your name is on it. I've had friends who traditionally published, and there was a book fair and they had a new book come out, and the publisher had a specific publication deadline that they agreed to. So the date of publication was on such and such a date. The book fair was a week earlier. The books were printed, the books came in, the author had the frickin' books, a physical copy that was already printed, but the publisher said, no, you can't sell them at the book fair because it comes out next week. Even though they were printed, they came in, the author's own books, she couldn't even sell them at the book fair because the publisher owns it, the publisher controls the timeline, so you have to wait the week until the date of publication before you're allowed to sell them. There are a lot of examples where self-publishing is faster. Self-publishing, you can literally just upload a PDF onto Amazon, and then in a few hours, it's available worldwide. For me, that's beautiful. It gives me complete control of the timeline. I don't have to worry about getting 10 years of rejections from an agent, then getting 10 years of rejections from a publisher, and then the publisher says this date, but then the book fair pops up and I can't sell at the book fair even though the book's earlier printed. So I've only self-published. I use something called Kindle Direct Publishing. I'll put the link in the chat. And I also just want to mention, I love Kindle Direct Publishing because of how helpful it has been to my author career. But I do want to just clarify, I'm not getting any commission from Kindle Direct Publishing or from Amazon. They're not giving me any kickbacks or benefits for saying this. I just, from the bottom of my heart, had such a good experience with them that I published A Mysterious Evening in Vienna in 2017. It was such a good experience that I popped out another 8 more books. So Amazon's not paying me to say this. Kindle Direct Publishing is not paying me to say this. This is like honest, candid feedback of an author in order to help other authors. So that's why I encourage people, if they want to self-publish, it is a very good option. But it's not like, I don't work for Amazon. I'm just an author who's trying to help other authors just by sharing an honest and candid experience of my experience with Kindle Direct Publishing. KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing, is basically Amazon's department for self-publishing.
John, how has your experience been with KDB in terms of some of the royalties and the percentage
Yep.
that they take? And I haven't explored the link. Thank you for putting in the
Yeah.
chat. That's one of the things that I've read, and again, you definitely know more than I do about this. I have read that one of the pros and cons, in terms of the self-publishing, is finding the right distributor and making sure that the fees and the percentage that they take is reasonable. How have you found that in your experience?
So Kindle Direct Publishing is really only the one option for distribution, which is Amazon. So it's very easy. You don't really have to decide too much. If you choose Kindle Direct Publishing, it goes on Amazon. The advantage of that is that it is available worldwide on Amazon. If I went to like a smaller hybrid thing where it's like, well, we provide an editor and a cover graphic designer, and you pay like $500, and then we will do a hybrid thing where it's self-published, but yet we'll do some services to help you, they probably won't even put it on Amazon for you. And I travel a lot. I have friends overseas. I can literally upload a PDF onto Amazon, and then within a few hours, my friends in Brazil can buy it. My friends in Montreal can buy it. My friends in France can buy it. Sometimes you just want to make sure that you go with a publisher that will allow for Amazon distribution, because it's so easy when it's on Amazon. It goes on like amazon.com.br, goes on amazon.ca. So like it goes worldwide on Amazon, whereas a lot of traditional publishers and hybrid publishers where it's kind of self-publishing, but they help you, so you have to pay. They won't even put it on Amazon. And just make sure you know what you're getting into, because in terms of distribution, you don't want to have them own the copyright and then you don't get it on Amazon, because everybody buys, shopping on Amazon during COVID, so, and it qualifies for Prime too. And it qualifies, yeah, go ahead.
No, that's really interesting, and that's great to hear too, and it makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
So thanks for sort of adding a little color to that. One of the things that I've sort of read and learned in the research and some of the conferences that I've sat in, very similar to this one, are some of the peaks and valleys of going the traditional route, particularly when it comes to engaging an agent.
Yeah.
And I don't know if going with an agent, if you decide to self-publish, still makes sense, just to make sure that you have somebody, an external party to review some of the contractual things. Have you had any experience with that side of the industry?
I wouldn't bother with an agent if you know you want to self-publish through Kindle Direct Publishing. An agent will increase your chances of having your book see the light of day. Whereas Kindle Direct Publishing, you're automatically accepted. They're not going to reject your thing. If you traditionally publish, you're probably going to get lots of rejections. We writers, we're very sensitive. We always get our feelings hurt every single time we get rejected. But if you go through Kindle Direct Publishing, literally, all you have to do is write the book, and then it's going to be accepted for publication, and you get to control what date. I don't even think agents would typically help you with KDP because, you already have a shoe-in. If you do want to traditionally publish, though, I just want to put a couple links in the chat. So Writer's Relief, that is a site that if you do want to go the traditional publishing route, that will help you with editing query letters. So you query an agent, and then if you're lucky, the agent will represent you to submit to a publisher. So Writer's Relief is a website that they help you write your query letters and find an agent in your genre. And then Query Tracker is how you find agents. So once you have the query letter written, then Query Tracker, which I'll also put in the chat, that can help you find the agent to represent your work. The agent will typically take a 15% commission, so you don't have to pay that, if you self-publish. In terms of percentages, so you get paid by royalties from Amazon. It usually takes like a month or two to get paid, and it's not a lot of money, but you will get royalties for every single book that's purchased. If you do, it's usually like 60% of the profits go to you and 40% goes to Amazon. So that's actually higher than if you traditionally publish. So if you sell more books, you make more through Kindle Direct Publishing because you keep 60% of the profits, which is actually a lot. They take out how much it costs to print the paper, but then of the actual profits, you keep 60%, and then Amazon keeps 40%. So it's a sweet deal, whereas traditional publisher, you make less. However, as you can imagine, the advance is there, and the advance is something that Amazon will never give you. So the advance, the way that works, you get like a couple or a few grand, and if the books don't sell, you actually have to pay those couple or few grand back. So that's the crazy part, is that like you get like a check for like $4,000, but then if you don't sell the thousands of books that the publisher's expecting you to sell, you actually have to pay the advance back to them. But if you're like, a famous author and the publisher knows you, they give you the offer, you get the advance, and then once you've sold that many thousands of books, then you start earning royalties from the traditional publisher.
So with
yeah.
self-publishing, like, what in your experience, just from your direct experience and from maybe people like as an unknown author like Amazon's a huge market, obviously, but like if nobody knows you, like what is there like even a range you can guess at about like how many copies like you can expect to like sell without a publisher backing you? Like how do you know what I mean?
Let me get to that in 1 second. I did check my financials. It's actually 70% that you keep when you self-publish through Amazon. So I had initially said 60%. It's actually even better. You get to keep 70% of the profits, and Amazon only keeps 30% of the profits. So you're never going to make a 70% royalty when you traditionally publish. So that's one of the advantages of self-publishing, is that you can literally keep 75% of the costs after Amazon takes out the cost of printing the papers. 70% of the royalty is really generous compared to traditional publishers, but you just don't get the advance. Jenna, your question. So you're asking about how many copies will you sell if you don't have a publisher and all you have is self-publishing through Amazon? It's a great question. Okay, so we need to do some honest talking with everybody to see what your goals are. If your goal is to have this brilliant manuscript and publish it and sell 500 million copies and quit your day job tomorrow so that you can, go do book signings in Paris and London and pay for the flight with your royalties, I really hate to break it to you, but there's no money in writing. So if you're doing this to work full-time as an author, if you're doing this to quit your day job and, be an author full-time, if you're doing this, I published 9 books. Not a single one of them has broken even. 3 of my books were bestsellers. Not a single one of those broke even either. So don't write thinking that you're going to make a lot of money. The way it works is when you go to a book fair, first of all, you have to pay the table, and then you have to bring your own books. So I usually buy about 30 copies of each book. I have 9 books. That's 270 copies that I have to pay upfront. You do get something called author's copies. Author's copies are at a reduced rate. They do not qualify for Amazon Prime, so you do have to pay for shipping. It does take a couple weeks for them to come, but you basically get to buy your own books at a cheaper rate, and then at book fairs you sell them at profit. But that means that you have to pay for 270 books. You have to store 270 books in your house somewhere, and between book fairs you have boxes, and it's going to be a long time until I break even from having paid for 270 books. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah, so like making a living as a writer, you're
right.
saying in the self-publishing route, it's difficult.
But it's also difficult in traditional publishing because you'll get years of rejections, and if you get a $4,000 advance, you can't live off of $4,000 a year. You know what I mean? It was really depressing when I found out that you can't be a full-time writer very easily. And I'm really sorry if I'm the bearer of bad news, but the honest truth is that I don't want you to set your expectation of being Stephen King, because it's the only people who can actually make a profit on a book are like a retired president or like a Hollywood celebrity that everyone has a paparazzi following them, because, you know, if a celebrity or an actor who has a following publishes a book, everybody wants to buy that book because it's a famous author. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But for those of us that are not famous celebrities, or, you know, we're writing like a creative work to be known as an author, not because we are, you know, like a professional athlete that we have 5 million followers on Instagram. If you don't already have 5 million followers on Instagram, and you're doing this because you want to be a famous author, it's really hard to be well known as an author. But if you're already a professional athlete with 4 million followers on Instagram, you publish a book, you make money because everyone knows your name. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And then somebody like, I'm sorry, is it Elise? Elise?
Yeah.
So somebody like Elise has 3 books. Like, so if she were to either self-publish or go with a normal, like a not normal, but a publisher, like, and they were like, oh my god, we love this book, like, could she, you know, with those 3, like, continue to use that, and then, you know, like, is that like a set? Because if you do want to make a living as a writer, even if it's hard, even if it's hard, if that's your goal, like, is that the way to go? Is like the way Elise is doing it, where she's got her 3 books and goes in, I don't know if they're different genres, I can't remember if you said, but okay, to me that sounds smart, and I'm not knowing, I'm not anywhere in the process. I'm just really curious about the craft of it, like the you know. So like if I were gonna do it, I think I would have done it like Elise, where you get 3 different types of books and then give yourself that way as a way to shop it around. Even if you do both routes eventually, maybe you self-publish if you don't want to hassle with a publisher, but then also have a publisher. That's, I mean, is it still just incredibly hard and unrealistic, or?
Anyone can do anything if you're really good at it. The money will come if you're really good at it. And I don't want to burst your bubble, but I just don't want you to like expect that you'll be able to do this full time, because most of the time when I go to book fairs, I'm sharing a table with the author next to me, and you know, I work a day job full time, and that actually helps structure my day, because if I was just writing full time, it'd be hard for me to have the creative energy, like this schedule and all. I actually like having a day job full time in addition to writing, but the people who do write full time, you're gonna laugh at this. So they fall into 2 categories. Either number 1, they're retired, so they just have enough money where they don't need to work and they're just spending their money on publishing books. Or number 2, they have a rich husband. And so those are the 2 types of people that I've shared tables, you know, at book fairs with, who write full time. Either they have a rich husband or they're retired. I've never met someone who writes full time. Doesn't mean it's not possible. I mean, you know, there are brilliant ideas. If they get into the right publisher's hands, you could literally become, you know, the next Stephen King. There's no reason you can't succeed. But everybody watches Netflix. I mean, the most downloaded app last year was TikTok, which is like a couple second video, because people have the attention span for a couple second video but they don't have the attention span, to read a book that's going to take time and concentration to sit down. And it sucks for us writers because we work so hard to publish this book, and then people just watch TikTok, they watch Netflix, and they don't pay money because it does cost, money for a physical object like a book, whereas TikTok is free, we put so much effort into this, but there's also an advantage. Do you know how you can use this system to work that to your advantage? You know that they're not going to read it, but you still have the book. People don't really care what's written in it. You could publish complete crap. Nobody's going to bother criticizing you because very few of the people who actually buy your book will have the time or concentration to read it. So the way you work that to your advantage is don't be a perfectionist. I know writers, we're always perfectionists. We always want to have the most brilliant idea. We edit, we re-edit, we pay $800 for a professional editor to review it before we publish it. Don't waste your time because nobody's actually going to read it. So Voltaire is attributed to the expression, the perfect is the enemy of the good. What that means is that if authors are always striving for perfection, they're never going to have a book come out, and therefore you don't get the good book, you get no book, because you're aiming for the perfect book. So, for Elise's case, you said you've been working on this book for 6 years. You have 3 books.
3 books.
I've written 3 books.
You've written 3 books. You've spent
Over
6
6
years.
And worked a full-time job.
And I
nice.
can probably
I'm
guess.
just busy.
Yeah.
So.
And to be honest,
And it's interesting, John. I know that you're sort of talking about some of the challenges that certainly exist with any writing, and I think you raise a good point that the perfect is the enemy of the good. That is an excellent quote.
Isn't it?
It really is. But I think what's so interesting about the craft of writing, particularly in today's age, because you raised a good point about readership in general going down, but the consuming of content going up in media. That content, with some exception to like TikTok, that content starts with written word.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's sort of the flame that has kept me going through these 3 books, is knowing that, hey, there may not be a lot of people who want to consume what I'm writing in book form, but if I write this to the best of my ability, and if I have a story that is valuable, if I decide to do something with a story, right? Because some stories we write for ourselves, some stories we write for others. Then let's explore all of the different mediums, whether that's publishing in book form, whether that's working with some of the media outlets. And that's what I'm kind of curious about. And so it's very interesting to hear you speak a little bit about the self-publishing path, because, it's an interesting one. Particularly if you go down that path and you put out the work in that medium, and then you think, okay, well, that was cool. I've got some revenue generated from the publishing route. What can I do with this work in other mediums? Which I'm curious to know if you've seen anything like that in your experience. You definitely have way more experience.
This book, Deception, Love, and Espionage, I wrote it as a collection of short stories. So it's a book, it's a paperback. I published it through Kindle Direct Publishing. I really want to make it into a movie. I have some friends in Los Angeles. I was visiting them, and we were going out. We were looking for a place to go out that night. We went to this one place. It was closed. The security guard comes out. He starts talking to us. Super cool guy. I love the guy. He's just really social. And then he casually mentions that he's a producer, because everyone in Los Angeles, they have a day job as a waitress or something, and they're an actor on the side. So he's a security guard. He's doing the 3 a.m. shift, and he's also a producer. So I'm like, oh, you produce movies. Oh, so one of the things I wanted to do when I was in Los Angeles was network with people in Hollywood because I have a book. I want to make it into a movie. Nobody's going to buy this. I mean, my friends will buy it, but they won't read it. But nobody's actually going to read this book to enjoy it until it comes out on Netflix. You know what I mean? So I'm still in touch with this amazing guy who's mentoring me to make a movie. But what I did was I wrote the book first, and then you can make a screenplay because it's a lot easier personally for me to write the prose, so like the short stories. You know, sometimes people like to write poetry. They write the sentences as just, you know, text. um a screenplay is clunky. It's like actions and commands. Sometimes creatively it's easier for me to use a figurative language, and that flows as I'm moving my pen along the page. Copyright the paperback back, and then once you've got the paperback copyrighted, then you transpose it into a screenplay. So you write the book first, then you write the screenplay off the book. You've already got the book copyrighted. You write the screenplay, you copyright the screenplay, and then you get a an agent to send it off to producers. So there are ways to foray into other media, such as film. And to be honest, Jenna, if you are interested in writing full-time, fiction doesn't pay a lot. You can use your creative writing skills to make full-time income, for example, as a social media coordinator at any company. They're looking for someone to write a post a day. Like, I used to do social media, and in my office, it was very creative. You know, it's visual, but also it uses the writing skills. The only thing I would caution against is like something that, if you do something creative for your day job, like social media social media person, or if you're like a teacher. When I was teaching, I didn't publish anything because all of my creative energy went into the lesson planning, and I didn't publish a single thing. Then when I started doing administration, 5 o'clock happens, I go to my writing group, and then I was publishing a chapter a week at the weekly writing group. Because I had all my creative energy that used to go into my lesson planning, now it's all going into my next novel. And that's beautiful because, you know, I work at 9 to 5, 5 o'clock I get out, I go to the writing group every Tuesday, I get a chapter done, I've got all my creative energies ready for my novel. If I was teaching, I never would have published anything. All of my creative energy would have gone into my lesson plans, and teachers aren't paid a lot, and masterpiece lesson plans don't really get recognized. But if you have, like, you know, a masterpiece book, you have that on your CV. And even if you work in administration and academia, I was at a university, they actually like it when you have publications on your CV. So,
yeah, I don't have a creative job, but I have a serious job. Like, I mean, there's no creativity in it.
But that may
in the
be an
law.
advantage.
So, it's
That-
but I, like, right? I'm so, like, my personal time is like I'm like a hobbyist person. Like,
Well, that's-
so historical dresses. I like writing. I like making things. And I think I like Elisa's route where it's like she took her time storing up an arsenal. And then I'm wondering, though, eventually if that is something that can be, like, if you get tired of the serious job and you want to, you know, throw yourself into, like, really give it a try to be like somebody who gets paid to write. And I wondered, in your experience, and that's what I was asking earlier, is like, if you get that arsenal and if you get that street cred, because like Stephen King wasn't Stephen King until he was Stephen King, you know?
Right.
So I'm just wondering.
I mean, I can tell you a couple things. So, if you have a day job that is not creative, that actually can help your creativity. Sometimes they recommend, like, even physical labor. Like, if you're a plumber, first of all, plumbers actually make a lot of money, and they're just using, you know, all their physical stuff. You know, they're like lifting pipes and like they're on their hands and knees. They're not using their creativity to write fiction. So as soon as the plumber gets off from work, he's got all of his creative energy to write. It may be an advantage that you do have your day job that doesn't drain you creatively, because then you can channel all of your creativity in your free time as your hobby. However,
plumbing be a draining?
Coming in for the win.
Very draining.
Well done.
I always love this one sign I saw that says, you know how they say, like, yeah, just, yeah, but yeah, like, but then, so some people like having a job like a plumber where it's not creatively draining. They pay their bills, and then when they're not working, they have the creative energy. But some people, actually are able to have more time on their hands, like if you do nothing but write, and if that helps you be more productive, you know, if you don't have to worry about the stress of a stressful job, you just stay at home, you like the unstructured time to write and just have like 60 hours a week to just write, that'll help you crank out your novel more fast. If that's how you write, then you will publish more. Personally, for me, I actually publish better when I have the structure of a day job, but a lot of people are able to use the free time, you know, if all they do is write. Some people, they actually can crank out a lot more books, you know. It really depends on your own style. Some people, have jobs, like, for example, I don't know, like, if you were, like, working at a toll booth, and you had, like, the graveyard shift, so it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and, like, once every hour, someone doesn't have Easy Pass, so you just physically have to be there, but you're literally just staring at a wall all day. Maybe your supervisor will let you bring paper and pen, and you know what I mean? Like, some people, they like to be in that environment that has, like, the background noise, but yet you're still doing your day job, but you're literally getting paid to write. You know, that type of thing. If you ask your supervisor, sometimes people have jobs that will let them write. That could be the best of both worlds, but it really, you know, whatever gets you in the zone, it's very personal how your creative energies are funneled. But yeah.
How do you get in the zone, John? If you don't mind me asking.
No. Well, I write
What's your creative flow like?
I write travel writing. So for me, I always have to travel. All of my books were actually inspired when I travel. So I was in Puerto Rico for one afternoon. I was only in Puerto Rico for one afternoon. And I took this picture in San Juan, and I wrote an entire book based on one afternoon in Puerto Rico. It was that amazing of an experience. Like, you know, I didn't take 4 months, take a sabbatical, pay a hotel for 4 months. I literally just was there for one afternoon, and I got an entire book out of one afternoon. And then I wrote another book inspired by that same afternoon. So for me, a change of scenery is always helpful for inspiring me. I love to travel. Doesn't mean you have to go to Puerto Rico. You could just literally go to the nearest big city. You could just take a road trip to the mountains. You know, for me, a change of scenery always inspires stuff. I write about, like, espionage and spies. So being in a foreign country where they speak a different language always excites my creative process. So it's very personal. You know, some people, it really depends on what genre you write. You know, but for me, when I'm writing romance, it's always because I totally fell head over heels in front of, you know, for somebody. So every time, you know, I fall in love, I get another love story, another book, a romance book out of it. One time I was in a hostel, and I wrote a story about that. So just, you know, whatever, like, life experiences that you have, you really can tell a lot about someone's personality by what types of book they write. Yeah. But anyhow, that was a very, very beautiful but long-winded introduction for one person. Did the other people want to tell me in the chat the questions? What city are you from? What genre do you write? How far are you in the publishing journey? For example, thinking about starting in the process, still writing, editing, done writing, ready to publish and just need help on how to, already published a book and working on book number 2. And the last question is, how could I make this workshop useful to you? So thank you, Elise. If somebody else would like to introduce themselves.
I can go. My name is Jenna. I'm in Pittsburgh, and I'm nowhere in the process. Like, I feel like I've always been a storyteller, and I'm, like I said, I'm a hobbyist, and I like a Renaissance soul, I guess. Like, I like to try lots of different things, and my family's been telling me for years and years that they wish that I would write something for real. I write little stuff for them, but mainly for their amusement. And I write people's Christmas letters to send around just to make it funny. And
that's cool.
And but I think I have some unique experiences, but more than that, I don't think there's a day that goes by that I used to drive a lot. I used to live in Los Angeles for a long time. And I don't think there's a day that goes by that I don't tell myself a long, detailed story. And it's fun for me. I think storytelling is what makes us uniquely human. And I love stories. I'm constantly reading. I read a few books a week.
Wow.
And I'm obsessed with it. Like, anything that hooks me in. And I'm the same with, like, music. I like music based on if it's telling me a story. And yeah, and so I'm just interested in it. I'm interested in the process. I'm interested in people that have done it and people that have done it in different ways. And I don't know.
Right.
I could grill each one of you, like, individually. Like, at least I'm dying to know what your stories are about. Like,
Me too.
I want to know what they are. I want to read them. Like, Sean's showing us his. I want to know what yours are. Like, so I don't know. I'm just very interested in it.
Thank you so much, Jenna.
Yeah.
I mean, the good thing about self-publishing is that once it's on Amazon, you can share your stories with family very easily. Kindle Direct Publishing qualifies for Amazon Prime, so literally, if you have a family member in Seattle and they want to, access your stories, you just send them the Amazon link, and then next day shipping, Amazon Prime, your story arrives at the doorstep. So sometimes people will self-publish things that are kind of like, for family stuff where they want to, maybe like a family tree or something like that. And be aware that it is on Amazon, so everybody can see it,
Okay.
But it's an easy way to distribute a paperback because it's good quality. It's like, it looks like a book. It is a book. It's professionally printed, but anybody can do it, so it's a great way to share stories from raising kids or stuff that you want to share. You can have family members or friends access it. I was also thinking, Jenna, if you do want to write full-time, they will hire ghostwriters. So, for example, a ghostwriter might, I don't know, like if there's a vice president who retired and they're very, very famous, but they suck at writing, because a lot of famous people suck at writing. So they might pay you a full-time salary to write their autobiography for you, for them. So, if you're good at writing and they have a famous name, you do all the work, you don't get recognized for it. You can never tell anyone that you wrote, this celebrity's autobiography, but you'll get money and you could do that full-time and their name will appear on the cover. You get lots of money and just never tell anyone. But sometimes people do make a full-time living ghostwriting. The other thing I was thinking of is you have a career right now and it's not a writing career. Right. If you wanted to, sometimes... So I remember I said people don't read your book. Your parents will buy your book, they'll read it, but like all your friends will just buy it, but they won't read it. That's the honest truth. Your friends will buy your book, but they won't have time to read it. You can work that to your advantage because if you have on your CV that you've published, 9 books like I have, if you make it relevant to your work, for example, if you have a day job where you are a business consultant or a life coach, and you publish a book about life coaching, or, you know, then you can sign on your emails, you could say, I am a, you know, John Orteva III business coach. But then you can now say, John Orteva III business coach and author of the book on how to make deals. So it gives you this credential that you can leverage for your day job. Because now you're not just a business coach, you're a business coach, and you have this credential for the other stuff in your life that you do. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And nobody's going to care if you have typos, if you're missing grammar. You don't have to take 9 years to have your life's work come out, because the honest truth is very few people are going to actually read every detail. But the honest truth is they will be impressed that you had the perseverance and the wherewithal to actually make it to publication, because it is an impressive achievement. And the honest truth is it's very easy. You upload a PDF onto Amazon and a few hours later it's available worldwide. Don't tell people that, but that's as easy as it is. You upload a PDF and then you're a published author in a few hours. But
I'm not I don't know. I'm not like trained in like I don't know if I'm a good writer. I don't know if I'd be good at writing a book. I'm a storyteller. I write stories, and I don't have training. I didn't get a writing degree. I got another degree, so I had to write research papers and stuff, which is different. But it's still writing, I guess. But I'm fascinated because, and I'm sure that there are scholars and people who can answer this, but like I don't know what makes a good story and what makes a bad story. I know when I'm reading a story if I think it's good or if I think it's bad. Right. And like, so for me, like, I'm kind of curious to know, like, and not that this is for this forum, but I'm just like, I'm just talking out loud. Like, I wonder what it is that makes a good story in the written word. Like, a story is a story. Like,
well, all of my books are fiction, and they're all short stories.
Okay.
So all of my books are collections of short stories. So I do write stories. My personal experience is that it has to be something you're passionate about and something that's personally meaningful to you. So as long as you're into it, it's going to be a masterpiece. You know, you don't have to think of the most brilliant creative thing that's a different field of what you've done for the rest of your life. But like, I don't know, like I used to be an English as a second language teacher. So I have a lot of really interesting stories from people who come into my class and they don't speak English. And I could write a whole book about all these funny experiences and these language miscommunications that are hilarious. And it entertains, but it's also very personal to me because I spent 6 years of my career working with people who didn't speak English. And that was fun for me. It's something that I'm almost an expert in because for 6 years full time, I worked with people from different countries. So I know all about, like, for example, if one of my students, if they wanted to say, I'm very bored, it's very common that they would say, I'm very boring. So, you know, funny things like that because I've lived in the field of teaching English, you get people saying, I'm very boring, instead of saying I'm very bored. It's not like I have to work hard to make it up because that's been my life, that's been my career. And so it's something that I'm almost an expert in. And also you want to make sure that what you're writing is something that you're very passionate about, because you're probably not going to break even. So you're putting in hundreds of hours to do something that's not going to pay you a penny. So make sure it's something that you love writing about, because you're going to be miserable if do you know what I mean? If you're writing something that you don't like writing and you're not getting paid and it's hundreds of hours. And
I definitely wouldn't do that.
That's why it's
a story I'm writing. It's going to be a story I have to write.
Something you're an expert in, something that's meaningful to you and that you like writing about. And that's why there is that barrier to publishing. I mean, Kindle Direct Publishing makes it so easy. You literally just upload a PDF onto Amazon and then you're done. That's not the barrier. The barrier is that it's so many hundreds of hours of unpaid work. That's why people give up. So, you know, it takes a lot of perseverance to publish a book. It's not that you have to be a creative genius, because nobody's going to read the book anyway. But
So John, do you write these when you say that, like, so you go into it thinking like nobody's gonna read this anyway? Like, so do you write these stories and put them out there like for yourself? Like, is it you kind of telling yourself a story in book form?
okay, so people do read them. I I don't mean it that way. Like, what I mean is that, like,
No, I know what you mean. I was looking
yeah,
for you. Like, why do you
right.
tell these stories? Like,
So
what's
people
your
will read them.
process?
It's not going to be like, 100 million copies of everybody reading
Yeah,
every word of it, but
yeah.
the effect is more that, like, people are like, whoa, you've published 9 books. You know, it comes up in job interviews. It shows a lot of perseverance and courage to put yourself out there and work hard towards a goal. Um, so why do I do it? The reasons
Yeah.
I write is because it's that creative, expressive outlet that everyone needs.
Okay.
For me, it's really fun to, have one of my readers come up to me and be like, "Oh my God, in your book, America Invades Canada Again, how did you think of having Abraham Lincoln be a goodwill ambassador to Canada during the Civil War when the Quebecois leave Canada? How did you come up with that idea? I loved it. Your historical
Wow.
satire was so funny. Where did you think of having Jackie Kennedy, like, divorce John F. Kennedy after he's assassinated?" And, like, all these really, I love history. It's something that was very fun to write a historical satire. So I do it because I have, coworkers and I have friends who will be like, "This book was hilarious. I love this book. Where did you think of this character?" And it's fun for me to be able to talk about something that made me smile, that I make someone else smile. I have fans on 5 continents, and they can all get the Amazon worldwide.
That's great.
And it's like, it's just fun. You go to book fairs, you have people come up to you and they're like, "Where did you think of that idea? And this was a really fun story to read." Or so that's why I do it, not because it pays my full-time bills, not because, and I know everybody wants to write full-time. Everybody would love to quit their day job and just travel the world working remotely. You can work from home, you don't have to get COVID. You literally just sit on the beach in the Bahamas, and then every time someone in Hungary buys your book, you get a royalty from Hungary, and you don't have to do anything because you're on a beach in the Bahamas. Wouldn't that be the sweetest job, to get passive income, to get the royalties and pay your full-time bills while you're on a beach in the Bahamas, and somebody in Hungary buys your book and you get a royalty? That would be the coolest job ever. It's just hard for people to, want to spend money on a paper physical book unless you're like a basketball star that has 6 million followers on Instagram and they know your name. And
When you say the book fairs, can you take your own books to the book fair without like what if you just had your own books printed up and took them to the book fair and got 100% of the profit?
So that's essentially what the author's copies through Kindle Direct Publishing do. They sell it to you for very cheap. So I sell my books. The retail cost is $9.99 for my books, and I will probably sell them. So I sell my books for $9.99. So, essentially, I guess what I'm saying is it's basically a $10 book. So I get $10, and it might cost like $3 to print it. Then you have to pay for shipping for the author's copies. So you could make like $7 profit. You do make profit. You have to store the books. You have to pay the tabling fee. But I guess the advantage of going through Amazon is, number one, it puts it on Amazon, and number two, it's actually a really nice finished product. Like, my printer couldn't, bind this. Do you know what I mean? Like,
that was my kind of question. I'm on a last question.
Absolutely.
So have you ever done, like, because when I was talking about the book fair, so I found this diary of my grandmother, and she wrote kind of her life story, but like in a journal. And so I typed it up and I had it printed for my mom and her sister, and I gave it to her like a book. So it didn't have an ISBN number. It was just like printed. could you do that with your own work, like, or like
Yeah.
got really fun with it, like a medieval manuscript and hand wrote it or something like that? Like, could you do that, bind it, and then print it and sell it at a book fair? Could you,
You
have you done
could.
that, or would you?
I have not done it, but I actually do know somebody who published the love letters of her grandmother and her grandfather, and she didn't do Kindle Direct Publishing. She actually went to a printing shop, and what she did is she basically paid money for them to bind it, and they printed out, books for her. I mean, the obvious disadvantage is that it doesn't have an ISBN. It's not on Amazon. Amazon will offer you a free ISBN, and you don't have to upfront anything. That's what I like about Amazon, is that in theory it's free. You just upload the PDF, and then every time someone buys one, it's print on demand. So that means, in theory, you don't pay a penny. You just write this book, upload the PDF, and then every single time someone buys one, you get like a $2 royalty. So that's beautiful. You don't have to pay anything.
You've done that?
That's why I do
print on demand?
Yeah. Everything Kindle Direct Publishing is print on demand. But the expense and the reason I do not break even is because it's fun for me to go to the book fairs, to buy 30 copies of each book, to have them out on the table, and then you've got the readers who are like, oh, where did you get, this idea for the two spies who fall in love, but they're on opposite sides of the Cold War and they can't be together. That's why I pay the money, so I can print the books and have them at the book fair.
Okay.
And of course, your mom's going to want an autographed copy, your coworker's going to want an autographed copy, and you can make more money if you sell author's copies. Because when you, for example, if you have your coworker buy it on Amazon and they bring you the copy that they bought on Amazon and you autograph it, they pay the same price. It's still the $10 for my book, but I only get a $2 royalty. Whereas for the author's copies, I get like a $6 royalty. So you're making $6 per book versus $2 per book. You just have to store them between book fairs, and you have to upfront a lot of money to print them if you have multiple titles. So that's why I haven't broken even yet, but I've only been publishing since 2017. So it's not like, I figured if I stop writing new books and stop printing new books and start selling the 300 books I have in my attic, then maybe I'll break even and make some money. I always tell my friends, they're like, oh, you must be so rich, you get royalties on every one of your 9 titles. Well, each book I write, I lose money, and the more books I write, the more money I lose. But eventually I will hopefully start making money, because I have the physical assets, I have the books, and then I make like $6 for the author's copies. So once I get rid of them, once I sell them at book fairs over the next 5 or 10 years, I might actually make some cash. And then the print on demand is additionally there, that you get like a couple dollars for every print on demand that someone buys on Amazon. So the books don't go away. They're on Amazon permanently. So like 50 years from now, I'll still be making money off of a book that I published in 2017. And when you publish a second book, people Google your name and they buy the first book too. So your first book is the most important book, because it's always going to be attached to your name for all subsequent books. And then when you publish your 5th book, your first book is still next to your name on Amazon. And so people will be like, oh, I like this book, let me see what else he's written, and they buy your first book. So your first book will always be there, and the sales of your previous books go up every time you publish a new one, because people are interested and they find out about you. Do you guys want to take a 10-minute break? I know I've been talking for about an hour. Do you want to take a 10-minute break? We'll come back at like 10 minutes from now?
Sure.
Cool. But yeah, I'll be here if you guys have, individual questions too.
Elise, do you have a favorite of your novels?
That's a great question, Jenna. Because each one was a very different experience.
Oh my god.
The second one drove the most change. That was the most interesting experience, but I'd have to say that my first one is still my first love. Because that one was where I really started applying all of the tools that I had learned, from going to seminars and doing the work and the craft, I suppose, is the best way to describe it, where I guess I found my voice. And also I fell in love with the characters in that story, to the point where it was like, it was nice, working in a daily corporate job. It was really nice to step into that character every morning for like the hour and a half that I would schedule to write. And I ended up really falling in love with all of the characters of that story in particular. And then when I jumped in to write the second one, that one came like fast and furious. And I did not really have a whole lot of time to go through the process I had gone through for the first book. The first book I had gone through that more tedious process of outlining and then sort of backdrafting, and it was far more strategic in the way that I laid that one out. And then the second one was 100% seat of the what is it called? This by the seat of your pants.
Yeah.
What they refer to it, and it was like, a little lightning bolt struck my head, and I sat down, and then a month later, I had a book.
Oh my gosh! And are the genres the same? Or are they related in any way?
They are not, which I think probably has something to do with the nature of the actual process. And the second one, I went through 4 rounds of revision, which I recently finished. And then this third one is very different because it is much smaller. It's more condensed, but it packs more of a punch. It is nonfiction as well. So the first one was the only fiction, but each one has been a different process, which to me is interesting. I've learned a lot about myself just by going through each one. And kind of, Jenna, what you said earlier definitely resonates with me, where it's like, I write. I don't know, if it's considered, if it's going to give me any street cred, but I did it. I went through the process, and I have a story. I have several stories now. And
have you been able to let anyone read them?
We'll see what we can do with it. But
have you been able to let anybody?
Process. How's your process been, Jenna?
I don't have one. I don't have one. I'm obsessed with reading, and I'm obsessed with stories, and I have running stories that I've been telling myself for years, and but I don't know if I would. I don't know if I would be good at I've never. Well, I wrote a screenplay once when I was living in Los Angeles because, oh my god, you live in Los Angeles, you have to. It's compulsory. But I was too scared to let anybody read it.
I've been like that with my stories too.
So no one's read your stories?
One person has read my first one, but one of the things that, and I think this is because I went to a couple of seminars very, very early in my process. And actually, before I say that, Jenna, I just want to say that's awesome to hear. That's how I started my first one. I was obsessed with reading. And I loved diving into the stories, and then I was walking outside of a Target one day, and it was like, bing, story idea for the number 1. I tried to scribble it down, and then came the whole process.
Oh my god.
But yeah, I'm very much the same. When I first finished the first couple drafts of that first one, I went to a few seminars. There's a really good writing center in Boston that I still take online classes from. And there was a lot of emphasis on protecting the work. So, just as a function of having that be my first introduction to the industry itself, it was just it was just magnified for me that, like, in order for me to do anything with any of my work, I have to protect it. And I am glad that I did get that exposure early, you know, particularly nowadays, with the tech side of the world. It is important. It is important to me, particularly because a lot of work went into these 3 books, like blood, sweat, and tears. I'm so impressed by you, John, because it sounds like you're able to just sort of do that. But for me, each story, each book is like my life force. So it's really important that I protect myself.
Of course.
Who was the one who have you let read your work?
There was a one person that I let read my work.
Somebody that knows you or no?
One person. I think I'll end with that.
I think I would be more likely to let a stranger read than somebody I know. Yeah, I think it's scary. Like, I think that would be one of the scariest parts. And I don't know, John, if you feel that way.
I can tell you who I've had read my work.
Yeah.
I hired a coach.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. So they're obligated to, like, give you
confidential feedback. Yeah.
I did that once with my first one, and then that was it.
Yeah, oh my gosh.
I mean, I can tell you what I do, so there are really 2 types of writing. There's, like, the very academic writing that, like MFA, so Masters of Fine Arts in Creative Writing. They will submit to literary journals, and those literary journals are only read by MSA professors, and in order to become an MFA professor, you have to be in that tiny percentage of people who read those literary journals, and they're all peer-reviewed, and you get lots of rejections, and you have to spend lots of money on an editor, and it has to be like this very academic niche. So that's one type of writing. The type of writing that I do is mass fiction, so I want it to be a book that everyone can enjoy. I want to write this book that, you know, people like my friends who are all types of different fields of work can enjoy, rather than only MFA professors and MFA students. So who do you show your writing to when you want it to be read by, you know, a firefighter and, you know, an office worker, and, you know what I mean? Like, who do you show it to? You show it to the firefighter and the office worker. You don't show it to professional editors, because a professional editor's job is to rip apart your work, so that way you feel insecure, so that way you keep paying them for their godly advice. And I didn't want to pay $800 to an editor so they could rip apart my work and have it tailored to, you know, like the creative writing professors who are all traditionally published in that tiny little niche. I want it to be like a book that people on the streets of, you know, Lisbon will be reading my book, and they'll have it translated into all these languages, because all people of all walks of life, not just creative writing professors, but like everybody likes it. So what did I do? I showed it to my friends. My friends who like to read, and they read it for free. I didn't pay a penny to an editor. And what I did is I asked my friends who like to read, I said, hey, can you help me? And they loved it because they like to read. They gave me honest advice. They weren't trying to tear it apart to make more money. And they're not MFA professors, so they are the target audience. If I hired a professional editor, they would make it, you know, for that niche that only a tiny percentage of people are MFA professors. But I want it to be read by my friends who are all types of different people. And I showed it, I know, Elise, you only showed it to one person, but my experience was to show it to as many people as possible and get as many eyes on it as possible, so that way I would get multiple perspectives, get honest feedback from people that I trust, and as much feedback as possible to create the best possible product. Plus, none of my friends are writers, so I didn't think that they were going to steal my work. Yeah. I mean, I could have copyrighted it before I showed it to them.
Or an NDA. That's
Yeah,
one
yeah,
thing
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Good idea.
that I found, because when I got to the point with the first work where I was like, okay, I've gone through several rounds of revision, I'm ready to have somebody take a look at it and tell me, like, am I any good?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody who has gone through the traditional publishing route. And so that's why I had,
Elise,
hired
let me
a
tell you something.
and it actually was very fruitful.
Mm-hmm.
Not only because it was, an established relationship that, included that degree of confidentiality,
Right.
but it was also really nice to have that validation of
Yeah, yeah.
when she read it, she came back, she was like, I really don't have a whole lot of like feedback, just
Nice one.
I have a couple of book recommendations, and after years of work, and toil that I had kind of done alone in a cave, that was like a beautiful gift that she gave me, truly.
Wow.
Gosh, I want to read your book.
Yes, send me a link when it comes out.
Can I sign an
When, when you're ready, when it's copyrighted, when you're ready, when it's on Amazon, send me a link. I want to buy it.
I will.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the honest truth is, if you guys are taking time on a Saturday to come to this workshop, to pay $10 to learn about how you can improve your writing, you already are good. You're putting in the dedication. I can already tell that you're a good writer. You don't need to hire an editor for $800 to tell you whether or not you're good or not. A lot of writers are introverts, and we are always questioning whether we have a brilliant idea or a bad idea. And that's what makes our writing deep and reflective. That's what makes good writing, but it also means that, Elise, I can tell your writing is good.
Oh, thanks. I needed to hear that. I appreciate that, John. Thank
Of
you.
course. But like, what I'm trying to say
Very
is,
kind.
you probably could save money next time. Don't hire a second editor and then a second writing coach and a second publishing coach.
Probably
Like,
right.
nobody's going to read your book, but once you click publish, people will be so impressed that you've had the perseverance, and I can already tell it's going to be good. You know what I mean? Like, writers, we're always introverts, we're always asking for acceptance, for permission, for approval, but if you're coming on a Saturday to a workshop like this, I can tell you're a serious writer. You really are, like, the perfect is the enemy of the good. So don't let yourself hold yourself back, if you know what I mean.
Really.
Because I can't wait till you all send me links when you have your books out. I can't wait to buy them all and we can celebrate. Yeah.
Elise, are you a perfectionist?
I used to be.
Yeah.
Then I wrote my second. And that went right out the window. For the first book, like, I went through all these courses and I read all the books, like the Elements of Style, and I really wanted to I know, John's laughing. I really want to sharpen up my
I was the same way.
Structure, because
I was the same way.
Like, I am natural in my natural element. In terms of like classical writing skills, the grammar and the structure of sentences, I'm okay. I'm so. I know that. Like, I'm not. I certainly don't have any kind of accreditation that would make me feel entitled to say that I am excellent.
Yeah.
But I did the best I could to develop some of that more scholastic type approach with the first book, and then the second one was like, I'm just writing words.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do my best after to make them sound better.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that answers your question. And John, I would love to hear your approach, because that's one that I really struggled with, particularly for the second one. As I was going through revisions, it was like, I'm doing the best I can to make it grammatically and, like, from a literature standpoint, meet some sort of standard. But ultimately for that second one, it was like, I have a good story here. Like, the story is where the value lies, and I'm going to do my best to structure the sentences to make it align with that. But
yes, Elise,
that's a great question, Jenna.
Yeah, Elise, that is exactly what that is, like, my whole, like, approach to storytelling. Like, I don't think there is such a thing as a bad story. I think if it's not interesting, if it's not an interesting story, the storyteller's not telling it right, because every story is interesting. And so it's like, so what I'm fascinated about is how to tell the story right. That's what is fascinated by me. That's what I'm fascinated by.
Well said.
And so that's kind of this seminar. I'm like, how do you tell the story right? Like, how do you approach like telling a story so that it's like you can have the same like basic. I'm sure you've all heard of the theory, like the hero's journey. You know, that typical story structure. Right? Yes, I'm obsessed with that idea, because you look at it and you're like, yes, like any like, you know, sort of like epic, but it doesn't have to be epic as in like you cross into the other world. It could be you start a new job. You know what I mean? Like there's like there's a story arc to every single, for me, for every single life, for every single story, and it might seem boring or mundane, but to me that's just because you're not telling the story right.
Well said.
No, these are all really good points. I mean, there's no right way that will work for every single genre. Writing fiction versus writing nonfiction versus writing personal stories. I guess I'm kind of lucky because my day job is a linguist. So I have a master's in teaching English to speakers of other languages, which is basically a master's degree in grammar. So it, you know, in terms of asking questions about how do I know if it's written well, I suppose I am very fortunate in that my training is how to write well. I also have a master's in French, and having a master's in a foreign language actually helps my English because, like, for example, one of my stories, La Robe Blanche de l'Espionne, actually came to me in French. So I wrote it in French, but a lot of my friends don't speak French, so I translate it into English. If I speak French and English, that means I can write in French and English. And if I can write in both languages, it gives me twice as many tools to conceptualize the world and express them. And then I always translate it into English. I'm sure Eric is a similar situation because you work at the UN. But
what? Eric, what is your story about?
I would actually love to hear more about you, Eric, and you know what you're writing as well, if you would like to share.
Please.
So I have also had my book professionally edited. So if you're interested in my experience with that,
absolutely.
I really am. I'd love to hear how yours has been, because mine was just kind of one and done, and then I got really skittish and started writing another one.
So you paid $800?
That's how much. That's what I said. Sometimes
I don't remember how much I was, but
sometimes editors were charged in that ballpark. But I said that not Elise.
I can't actually remember how much I spent, but it was a lot more than that. It was thousands of dollars.
Right.
And did you find it to be beneficial?
My main issue is that my book is way too long.
Okay.
And so I needed it cut, and she did that. I'm kind of a little hesitant to say whether or not she has cut enough, because it's still a very long book, but at this point, like I think she cut a lot of the cruft out, and I would have to make like hard choices, or just have, you know, a publisher say, we're going to cut this, whether you like it or not, to continue. But yes, I think it's helpful in the sense that it always helps when a fresh set of eyes looks at your book.
Yeah.
But
that's funny, Eric, because I feel like mine are too short. Maybe we can. And actually, Jenna, I'm so sorry to jump in, but you had asked a question about who I had shown the book to, and I said just one person, and that was before it was copywritten. My first book, now that it is copywritten, I have recently sent to a friend for a peer review. but I feel very comfortable sending it to a friend now that I've at least gone through that process of copywriting it.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
Eric, did you go through any process like that when you shared your book?
What kind of process?
Like signing an
Copyright.
NDA or any kind of like confidentiality, just, to protect the nature of your work? Okay.
Wow. Bold.
Most people
Can
don't,
I
though.
ask?
Most people don't. I mean,
Interesting.
I hate to say this with all due respect. If I write something, it's not that valuable. Nobody's gonna steal it because I'm not even breaking even on it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I have a question for Elise and, well, I guess everybody, but particularly Elise and Eric, because you guys have both mentioned, when you say too long, like how many pages? And Elise, when you say too short, how many pages? Or words? I think don't people talk in words, maybe not pages, words.
Word count.
Yeah, word count. Like what do you think is too big, and what do you think is too small?
So, and I read this a few years ago, and I know that there is it's fluid, but I did read, when I was first setting out on my first book that, an average novel for the average reader's market is between 65 and 70,000 words. And I think my first one falls at just under 60,000 words. And my second one is a little bit closer to 70,000, but I think it still falls a little short. And it's almost like I try to go back and beef them up, but at the end of the day, it's like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I enjoy brevity. Like,
Yeah.
and I don't know if that's just because I'm still,
Okay,
I'm sure there's
so
definitely areas for improvement.
Elise, what you're saying is 60,000 to 70,000 words. That would be like 240 pages for the 60,000 word book.
Is that about right?
240.
Sorry, I'm like,
Yeah.
are you asking me? Yes.
240 pages is definitely not too short. I publish short stories, and Kindle Direct Publishing will let you publish a book. It's just a minimum of 24 pages.
So, and this is where, and I say yes to the 240, but I mostly work with word count only because like my formatting is like a college essay, like double space.
Yeah.
It's also
Times New Roman 12, whatever.
It's also going to be a little bit longer because the book, like I chose 6x9, but Kindle Direct Publishing will give you templates of Microsoft Word documents that will either be formatted for 6x9. So it's not an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. It's actually a smaller size that you have on KDP. You could even do a square book if you have illustrations. 6x9 is popular. I chose 6x9, but you can download the template for free from Kindle Direct Publishing, and they'll give you the 6x9 template on Word. But it's not going to be the same amount if you have 8.5 by 11 piece of paper versus a 6x9 book. The book is actually going to be smaller. But don't worry about 240 pages being too small, because my first book was only 51 pages. It's just a few short stories. So don't hold yourself back because, you know what I mean? Like, don't worry about 240 being too short. Like, I published a 51-page book, and people loved it. And then, like, there were 5 other books that I wrote in follow-up to 5 of the chapters that were all short stories. And I elaborated on those short stories. Now I have 5 books that were inspired by those favorite 5 short stories. So I know, like, Jenna, if you tell stories, you don't have to write a whole autobiography and make it 400 pages. If you just have some funny stories, as long as it's more than 24 pages, you can get an ISBN for free. You can put it on Amazon. You just have to have at least 79 pages in order to get the title on the spine. So you can see it's really nice if you get the title on the spine, because then people can find it on the bookshelf.
Right.
So you get more sales. Not only does it sell better, but also it's easier to find it. But if you have less than 79 pages, it's still great because you don't have to worry about, just don't fill it with junk.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Eric, what is your page count? I'm looking for a bit, or what's your word count since before they edited it?
I don't remember how long it was before it was edited. I
was hoping you were like 200,000 words.
I think it's probably close to that.
Nice. Really?
And that's going to be expensive to pay an editor to read all those pages too. Because if you have a short one, yeah, I mean that's 800 pages.
Oh my, yeah, the book I'm reading right now is about 700 and something, and I'm like, I just am like, every time, the closer I get to the back, I'm like, no, like I just want it to go on forever because it's that good.
Sometimes I estimate about 250 words per page, so the 200,000 word count for Eric's book would be about about 800 pages. It's a very heavy book. Some people might not finish it if it's all 800 pages. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes people have actually said that they love that my books are so concise because they can read it on in one flight. They get in the airplane, they take a book, and by the end of the flight, they've read through. My books are very fast-paced, so there's a lot of action, there's a lot of things that happen quickly. It's very engaging, people say, and they like that it's not War and Peace. They like that it's just a short story. Everybody's different. If you can write War and Peace, I'm sure it'll be a masterpiece. But it's going to take longer to edit because every time you edit, you have to read 800 pages. Whereas my short stories, I just read a short story and they've edited the whole book. You know what I mean? But yeah.
That's a really interesting. That's a good point, John. The editing process that I've gone through for these past two books were kind of nice, but daunting. It's like, okay, I have to read this story all over again. Like, I wrote it. I know what's gonna happen next. But that's a really good point, and I'm actually kind of interested to hear, Eric, how the process was for writing your book, because that's a big piece of work.
It's a project. It's a whole project.
Yeah.
What would you like to know?
What was that experience like for you? And I don't know what the genre is, but what was that experience?
I mean, it does take a lot of dedication and perseverance, as John said, and I think it helps to plan goals and set deadlines and at least a rough timetable. Especially like chapter by chapter, but then I would, at the beginning of each chapter, set out like, here's how I'm going to organize this chapter. Here are the main points I want to cover. Estimate how many pages or what percentage of the chapter would go to which section, and then try to figure out by like the 15th of the month I want to be done with this part. By the 25th of the month I'll be done by this part. And then maybe 10 more days for the summary and any final things that come up. So you plan it out, and then you probably won't necessarily stick to the schedule. There's sometimes things that come up that you don't foresee, and I would address them regardless of my arbitrary timetable. And then, I mean, circumstances in my life helped. The COVID quarantine helped. But it's mostly just shutting up and doing it.
Well said. That's awesome. Good for you.
John, can I ask you, have you ever edited work? Like, have you been an editor for other writers?
I have not. No, I do publishing coaching, but I'm actually kind of new. This is only my second class I've ever given, so I'm really excited to, help other people write their first books. For me, it's very rewarding to help people achieve the joy that I get when I publish. Now I'm helping other people reach that state where they can be like, I'm a published author, and it's rewarding for me to help other people say that. So you guys are only my second class. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But about deadlines, so I do find that holding myself accountable to a deadline is actually really helpful. Just like Eric said, because if you don't have a publisher that says, give me your manuscript on this date, the cover will come out on this date, and this is the date of publication. You have to do all that yourself. So sometimes that's not good because you might be like, okay, well, I'm going to write a book. And then 6 years later, you're still on the first chapter and you don't have an editor kicking your butt saying, when are you going to give me your draft, right? So when you self-publish, either you're going to succeed on your own terms or you're going to fail on your own terms. In order for me to make sure that my books do come out, so I'm a historian, I always pick historical dates. For example, The Traveler's Sketchbook came out November 11th. It's basically a collection of my drawings from my travels around the world. So it's illustrations and photographs that I took while I was like sitting on a bench in Athens and drawing the Acropolis and stuff like that. I wanted this to come out November 11th because of the theme of bringing people together across international borders, just like on the armistice that ended World War I, brought people together across international borders, and my travels around the world kind of connected me to people from other countries, and I got to meet the other, and we exchanged cultures, and I met people when I traveled. So it's this idea that, you know, the Great War ended on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, so I wanted to have it come out on November 11th. The book was ready on November 11th, 2017. Everything was done, but I said, you know what? 2017 is the 99th anniversary of the Great War ending. I'm going to wait a year, have it come out November 11th, 2018. The book came out a year later. It became even better because I had a whole year to add a preface and a note on the date of publication and a dedication. I had a year to think on it, let it cook, make it even better. And then the book came out on November 11th, 2018, which there's a little note about the date that it actually came out on the exact 100th anniversary of Armistice Day, Veterans Day, November 11th, the end of the Great War. So the whole preface is about, the first sentence in this book is, art is what unites humanity. Drawings do not need to be translated from one foreign language to the next, in lieu of words getting in the way, foreign words that make sense to some who encounter them but not all, words that differ from language to language. No, art is universal, a visual representation of reality without the bias of a specific language. So remember, this book is all drawings, so it's about art. I chose November 11th, 2018 as the date of publication for The Traveler's Sketchbook because today is the 100th anniversary of the armistice that ended World War I. Newspapers in 1918 described it as the greatest day in the history of the world. A destructive, terrifying war was ended. Men laid down their guns, united with their former enemies across country lines, and became brothers. Likewise, I've had the opportunity to meet many people across foreign borders, near and far, all over the world while putting together this sketchbook. So it goes on to talk about, number one, why it's significant that I published on the 100th anniversary of November 11th. And number two, it puts me in this rigid structure where I'm going to get this book done by November 11th, 2018, whether I like it or not. I'm going to click publish on November 11th, 2018, because the frickin' preface obligates me to, because I've promised it in the preface. I can't have it come out in like January 2019. It has to be on time. Mm-hmm. It's going to come out on November 11th, whether I like it or not. I'm going to have a masterpiece that's done. If I didn't have a historical deadline to hold me to it, none of my books would have come out. The first book, A Mysterious you can tell I'm a history nerd. The first book, A Mysterious Evening in the Vienna, where I spoke my voice for the very first time as an author, I chose September 3rd for the date of publication of A Mysterious Evening in Vienna. This is my first published book, and in a sense is my debut of my voice as an author. My fellow history nerds know that September 3rd, 1939, was when France and England declared war on Nazi Germany. Prime Ministers Edouard Daladier and Neville Chamberlain, who both shook hands with Hitler at the Munich conference just 1 year earlier, are now drawing the line and declaring war on Hitler, in a sense creating their voice and speaking up for what is right. This is also the date of the King's Speech from the movie The King's Speech. A king who cannot speak, a king who cannot talk suddenly has a voice. George VI's speech impediment is no longer impediment for him to have a voice. When war is declared, the British king is able to articulate his speech on live radio, that resonates his voice worldwide. Democracy speaks out against fascism, and a previously unheard voice is debuted. What better day to publish and let my writing speak its voice for the first time? But yet is that not the purpose of writing? To insert your voice into the world of words, to let your voice be heard, to speak up. So make your contribution to the world of literature. Stop thinking and start sharing. Insert your voice into the dialogue. The world will never be the same. So there's a whole postface in this book about it coming out on September 3rd. So it has to come out on September 3rd. So that's personally what I do. I structure them based on historical dates because I'm a very big history nerd. This book comes out on September 3rd. They all have historic anniversaries. And if I didn't do that, I never would have had published anything because perfection is the enemy of the good. And I'd always be perfecting it and I never would have published anything. But September 3rd, I became a published author because I promised it would come out on September 3rd in the postface. That's what works for me, but some people are able to structure their deadlines separately. The other thing I want to add is the second book is always easier than the first book because you have the Kindle Direct Publishing account. You know how it works. You already have the accountant because you need a Schedule E for royalties. You already have, researched how to do the copyright. You don't need to worry about getting sued because you've already researched everything about copyright law and how to do the little copyright page with the ISBN. Kindle Direct Publishing will actually not format the ISBN correctly. Just a heads up, they actually only put one dash in, which really bothers me because an ISBN has 4 dashes and they need to be in specific spots. So when you see an ISBN, the order of where the 4 dashes are actually matters, and KDP will give you 1 dash. So you have to go to I'll give you the name of the website if you want. There are websites that will convert your ISBN, and that's important because you want to look as professional as possible when you're self-publishing because you don't have an editor to catch all the mistakes. You don't have, you know what I mean? It's really up to you to make it look professional. And if you're self-publishing, people are going to think it's a crappy book until you prove them wrong. So you have to look very much like a traditional publisher, like Penguin Random House selected you from 1 in a million to publish your book. And if you just take the ISBN that Kindle Direct Publishing gives you with 1 dash, it's going to look like some crappy PDF that you upload onto Amazon, and you don't want it to look that way. So if you go to, I'm going to find the website. If you go to that website, you can actually convert your ISBN, and that way it looks like a 4-dash ISBN, because I've had times where I will freaking go to Kindle Direct Publishing. They do have an email. There's the link. It's isbn.org. They can convert your ISBN 10 to an ISBN 13. They can hyphenate it for you. There are times when I will email the customer service at Kindle Direct Publishing, and I'll be like, can you please hyphenate my ISBN? Half of the time, Kindle Direct Publishing will hyphenate the ISBN with the 4 dashes upon request, and half of the time, they don't even know how to hyphenate the ISBN that they're giving me. So these are the secrets of the trade that I want to give you guys, because nobody's going to tell you that Amazon gives you an ISBN and it's incorrectly hyphenated. Who would even think that Amazon would incorrectly hyphenate an Amazon ISBN? But you have to make it look professional, because they're going to give you 1 dash. An ISBN by law has to have 4 dashes. It does matter where the dashes are in that number. And you want to make it look professional. You don't want to look like some half-assed PDF that somebody uploaded onto Amazon. You want it to look like a masterpiece. Yeah.
John, I think there's some questions coming in on the chat.
Absolutely.
If you've seen them.
Yes, and it is almost 4 o'clock. Do you guys have to go right at 4? I'm happy to stay. If you guys want to stay, you're more than welcome to stay. But it is 4 minutes to 4. So are you guys good if we run a little over?
I could probably do 15 minutes.
Okay,
I don't know
absolutely.
if everybody else's schedule
Yeah.
allows for that, but
Yeah. And it looks like Nyasha, you had some really good stuff that you brought into the chat. So perfection is the enemy of the good. So perfection is the enemy of the good. I think I might have talked about it when you came in just a tiny bit late. Perfection is the enemy of the good. That's attributed to Voltaire. It means that writers were always perfectionists, so we will spend lots of energy improving our writing to make it perfect, but then that means we sabotage ourselves because then the writing never actually comes out. So the perfect is the enemy of the good means that if you're aiming for perfection, you're never going to have a good book come out because you're aiming for the perfect, which is unattainable. Therefore, you never have any book come out. So just aim for a good book, set a historical date, maybe your birthday or something like that, and have the book come out on your birthday, whether you like it or not. It's done. Whereas if you indefinitely postpone it, then you're never, ever, ever going to have any book, let alone a perfect book, which is unattainable. Just do a good book, set a deadline, and then send me a link and we can party once it's published.
Thank you, John, and hi, everybody. I know I've been very quiet.
No!
This is such great information. I think alluding to what Elise and Eric were talking about more, like the money part of it, of self-publishing, because I'd like to know what is, I think I get the idea, but I just quickly wanted to know what's your take on spending those thousands of dollars to possibly work with someone else to help you self-publish, you know?
Right.
I was in another Zoom. I got great information, but they wanted money, and they wanted money up front. Right. And then they would do like a training in you writing, all the way from writing your book to publishing it, to printing it, to distributing it. They promised to be a part of all of it, but I already had spent about $500, and then I was like, wait a second, is this really legit?
Right.
So
right.
I haven't even reached out to the person yet to really see like where's my 500, taking me. But I just wondered from your great experience, John, and everyone else.
You paid $500
on that.
You paid $500 to that service already?
I did, and what it was like an initial. Like they said, if you pay 1,000, then we will start the process. And I was just like, I don't have 1,000.
Wait a minute. Did you get scammed? Did you get nothing for your $500 that they took from you?
I got nothing, and I believe I can get it back though. As maybe that might sound a bit cynical, or like I think I can get it back because I see the person continually online still doing these book.
Well, the 500, the 500 was for the seminar. You're saying like the seminar was $500, and then they're saying, but for 1,000, we can take you through the process
further. Right.
I see.
And I just wonder, what is your take on that, John? Because you seem very independent, and very like you have done the work yourself. So
here's the thing. So I had somebody try and scam me once. What happened was I got a voicemail. I don't know how they got my cell phone number, but I got this voicemail saying, "We are so-and-so Productions," and they named one of my books, and they said, "We have selected you to make a movie out of your book." Somehow they knew my name, my title, and my cell phone number. I did not put my cell phone number in my copyright page, but they found my cell phone number, and they said they wanted to make a movie out of my book. So some people would get so excited that they would just take out their credit card and say yes to anything. But I'm always a little bit suspicious, so I'm like, okay, well, let me call them back, but let me just find out what it is. So the guy picks up, he says, "I live in New York City, I work for this production company, and we would like to make a movie out of your book." So of course, being me, I say, "How much will it cost me?" And he says, "Well, we will take $4,000 from you, and we will use that $4,000 to create a trailer for your movie. If the movie gets picked up by Hollywood, then you get your $4,000 back, and we split the Hollywood money. If the movie does not get picked up by Hollywood, like the trailer that they make, because they're going to write the screenplay, they're going to do the trailer, so they're going to take the $4,000 from me, and if it doesn't get picked up by Hollywood, then we split it 50-50. They take $2,000 from me, and I get $2,000 of the $4,000 back." So for some people, honestly, this kind of a scam that like either, you know what I mean? Like you're going to lose $2,000 if you don't make a movie, but you're going to lose it's for me, I did get excited when a producer found my cell phone number and left a voicemail saying, "We want to make a movie out of one of my favorite books." So you get excited, but there are scams. They literally wanted me to give my credit card number to pay $4,000. So what? They could like convert it to a screenplay, which I could do myself. You just Google how to make a screenplay. I'm good at writing. I can write a screenplay myself. And so they can make a 3-minute trailer. I'm not going to pay $4,000 for them to make a trailer that may or may not get picked up to be making a movie. Like, they will play on your emotions, because I did get excited when a producer called me and said, "We'd like to make a movie." But at the same time, just be very suspicious, because I am so sorry that you lost $500, and I hope you get your money's worth. But there are a lot of publicists who will take your money, and you might or might not sell a single book because of that publicist. I can also tell you, if I can ever help you guys, whatever for free I can help you with, I'll do it for free. I am starting this career potentially of helping people publish their books. So if you want me to mentor you, we can work something out, pay by hour, whatever you want. But if you want to work with me, just send me an email. I put my email in the chat. But either way, definitely keep in touch, because if you have questions, I really want to help you guys get to the point where you can be like me and be like, "I just published a book." It's exciting, it's fun. You have people, from all walks of life who get excited, but there will be people that will scam you, because that's just the way the world works. If they can make money off of you, they'll take the $500 and run. And I don't know exactly what you got from that $500 besides a webinar, but there's
That's an intense amount of money, like for a webinar. That sucks.
it is like,
But you didn't get more from it.
like this webinar is only $10,
Right.
but $500. I hope that you get more than just a webinar from that. Hopefully they give you something.
Yeah, I'm looking to get my money back, because
Right.
at this point, I think that I can probably write, the books that I want to write using, like,
Right.
I found you on Eventbrite.
Yep. Yeah.
And I feel like I can do
Same.
the same way. Like, I really love your in a very humble way, the confidence you have in yourself, John. Like, you were like, "I wrote this masterpiece and it was due, November 11th, and I got it done." And
But that's
the
because I'm a
deadline-
teacher like you. I'm used to talking in front of crowds. You and I are both teachers.
right. But I love that. And even like Eric, the determination, at least already publishing her, or right? Or did you said you already published, correct?
No, so
No.
I've written all of these works, and to be honest,
Yes.
Nyasha, the experience that you've described, and John, a little bit of what you've talked about with just like trying to get your work out there, but then running into all of the potential scams and the legality of it, like that has kept me in the corner, because I'm terrified to share it with anybody, because I don't know if I'm taking the appropriate steps that I need to take to protect it. So
Oh my God,
yeah,
Elise,
it's
I
definitely
totally
been for
agree.
me.
You guys are so funny.
I totally agree.
Oh, I love you guys. You guys are the best.
You know what I mean? It's like, I want to get
Yes.
this out there, I want to publish it, but I'm terrified that if I take the wrong approach, or if I don't protect myself, like all
Yes.
of the years of work and like
But here's the thing.
personal sacrifice.
But just think,
Yes.
you're
Done.
sabotaging your own success because you're not publishing, you're not showing it to your friends because you're afraid that someone's going to steal it, so therefore you're not making progress on your book.
I mean, yeah, because it's like that's the work
Right.
is
If-
like that's
Right. I get it.
baby.
Like my books are my
That's your
baby. I have 9 children, 9 books. I get that. But you have to kind of trust the system. I mean, a reputable editor, a reputable agent, and even KDP, they're not going to steal your book ethically, and also because, with all due respect, my books are not valuable. My books have not broken even. Nobody's going to steal something, take all the effort to edit it, publish it, revise it, and then lose money off of it. You know what I mean? Like, no one's gonna... I mean, it's very possible. People do violate copyright all the time. If you want to go, I'll put the link in the chat to copyright.gov. You can pay the $65, so that way you can sue them if they do steal your ideas. You don't have to have it with an ISBN on Amazon. You just have to have it in tangible form. You submit the tangible document to them, and then you can sue them if somebody tries to steal it from you. And that's perfectly legitimate. It just... I don't want you to be so scared that someone's going to steal it that you sabotage your own success, that you never... You know what I mean? Like...
Or maybe you learn and you take the right steps as
Right.
best you can to protect yourself.
Because...
You can't stop somebody from jumping into
Right.
hacking into your email address or anything if that's where you're storing.
Because
stuff,
remember, the
but
goal of writing a book
take
is...
steps
The goal
to
of
protect
writing
yourself.
the goal of writing a book is to put it on the internet so that everybody can enjoy it. So that's the end result, is everybody's going to have access to it.
Right.
So you kind of have to be comfortable with everybody reading it. Don't publish anything that's
I'll be
personal.
comfortable as long as they pay the appropriate
Yeah.
venue for it.
Right. I mean,
That's not the end goal. You're right, John. The end goal is not to do this for money, but when you have created a piece,
right.
when you have gone through that process, that
Right.
individual process of building a piece of literature personally,
Right.
and you decide, because sometimes, and I don't know if this is the case for anybody else, I've written pieces and I don't know if I want anybody to see them. I wrote them for me.
Right.
Some of them, maybe, if somebody else can gain some value from reading it, maybe I should think about publishing it. But at least I want to know that if I do decide that one of those stories is ones that I'd like somebody else to read, that it's done so in a way that the work and the effort, the sweat, the blood, the tears that I gave to be able to share that is coming back to me. And that's just business sense.
Right. No, I mean, that's the other thing, is that, what was I gonna say? Excuse me. I don't know. We've got a lot of really good ideas. I know we're over time. I'll be here, but if you guys do need to bounce, that's perfectly fine. But I'll be here. I'll keep going. Just feel free to sign off whenever you need to. But, yeah, how did you guys feel, though? Was this helpful to you guys?
Yeah.
It really was. It really was. I mean, and, it's good to hear about your process too, John, because, that helps for people who do things differently, especially with the number of books you're able to put together so quickly. Like, that is very inspiring for sure. So thank you.
No, my pleasure. I mean, it's 9 books in 4 years, so it is a lot. There's one 12-month period where I published 4 books. 4 books a year is a lot. I'll be honest, 4 books a year is a lot. Some people will spend 10 years working on one book. But that's why I'm the guy who helps people publish books, because it's something I love to do. It's something I do all the time. It means the world to me to be able to inspire you guys to get to a point where you can be like, I just published a book. That's rewarding for me, So, just real quick, a lot of people have questions about covers. They really do judge a book by its cover. Just don't get sued for, taking an image off of Google Images. There are actually lawyers that spend a full-time day job just looking at book covers to see who used a Google image. Then they contact the copyright holders so they can sue you. So, literally, lawyers will troll book covers to see who's using a copyrighted image. And a book cover is an advertisement, so it's a huge violation. It's not just the inside of the book is not as bad. It's still bad. It's still illegal. But the front cover of the book, you have to make sure that advertisement, you own the copyright. All of these books, I took this photo from, I actually danced tango in Paris. This is one of my favorite memories. So this was the cover of my first book, was Dancing Tango in Paris at the Paris Opera House. This was from that afternoon in San Juan, Puerto Rico. So all of my books are meaningful pictures. I took the photo, so therefore I own the copyright. If you don't have a good camera roll that you can choose from, I'm going to put in the chat a couple of sites that you can use. There's Shutterstock. They have some really nice images for book covers. You basically pay to access their photos, but you can do a 1 month free trial. So you download 10 images. I just put in the chat. You get 10 beautiful book cover like images for the 1 month trial, and then as long as you remember to cancel the 1 month trial, you actually get your money back for that 1 month, and you get to keep the 10 images. So you could publish 10 books without, if you want to be really cheap, I'm not saying you should do this. Definitely the models and the photographers deserve the money, but you could also change email addresses, do another 1 month trial of Shutterstock, get another 10 images, then try another Gmail address, get another 10 images. Just make sure you end the trial before the month elapses, because it is $348 per year that you have to pay at the end of that 1 month trial. So it's like the $29 per month trial. You get the $29 back as long as you cancel in that first month, but then if you don't cancel, you have to get charged $348. Wikimedia Commons. Wikimedia Commons has public domain images. They'll tell you if the artist requires attribution or if you can use the image in the public domain, but honestly, those are kind of crappy images. They're not really professional photography for book cover. You have to sort through a lot of crap because it's all just images that nobody cares about because they're giving it to the public. There are sites called 100 Covers and also 99 Designs and also Freelancer, where you can hire people, you can have contests for your book cover. The cover really is the hardest part because we're writers, we're good at writing, but we're not graphic designers, so we don't have the Photoshop skills. I mean, maybe you do, and that would be great, but it costs so much money to hire a graphic designer to do a Photoshop for your cover, and they do judge a book by your cover. That's what determines sales. You want a good cover, but you can't afford $800 for a graphic designer. You can just run a contest on Freelancer. That's what I've done. You basically get somebody in a third world country who will charge 1/10 of the price. They give you lots of time. They speak perfect English. And then they just email you the JPEG, and you got this beautiful cover that costs $200 instead of $1,000. So there are ways to, not lose too much money on publishing a book, because again, you're not going to make $200 publishing a book in royalties. So you don't want to pay $1,000 for a cover that you're not going to break even on. And also get a separate social media account for your author stuff. I recommend you get a free website, like a Weebly or a Wix. WordPress is a little bit hard to use unless you're a computer programmer, but there are lots of free websites. I have a Weebly. I'll put it in the chat. Use the same, for example, all of my social media are author John Tivan. So my Instagram is author John Tivan. My Facebook is facebook.com/author John Tivan. My Weebly is authorjohntivan.weebly.com. So just keep it consistent. Otherwise, people might think that you're like a catfish. Just keep it consistent so it looks professional. Get a separate Gmail. I'm sure you guys already know this, but don't use your personal Gmail because then anyone can spam you. Use a separate Gmail for your author stuff that you put in the copyright page and everyone sees. Don't use your personal email address. If your personal Gmail is sexykitty1990, don't use that for your author stuff. Just do authorjohntivan@gmail.com. It's a lot cleaner. But yeah, I mean, that's mostly it. I just wanted to shove as much information as I can get to you. I don't want to take up your entire Saturday afternoon. But yeah, I guess we'll just end here. But I'll hang out if you guys have questions. But for the people who do have to go, just definitely keep in touch. If I do another Q&A in a month or so, would you guys want to check back in? We could do this again.
Certainly.
Yeah.
This is interesting. This is great.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'll email you guys. I do get busy with my day job, but if I have another event, you're all more than welcome to come. I would be delighted to see the same faces again. Thank you so much. And keep in touch. But yeah, if you have to go, feel free to go. But I'll be here. So if you want to ask some questions, I'm not going to log off immediately.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Thanks,
It was nice
everyone.
meeting everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Take
You guys
care.
are the best. This was
Bye-bye.
fun. Thank you.